Fantasy Hockey Picks and Bets, presented by Prize Picks here on the Mayo Media Network. I am Matt Moody, joined by DJ Mitchell, and we're here to go through Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final. DJ, Montreal heads back home down 2-0. How you doing, and how you feeling about this Friday night?
Yeah, if you're joining it on the video, you'll see I'm in a brand new location for the first time ever. For the last time of the season, I am at a new spot. So the past 3 days I've been moving and trying to watch as much hockey as possible. And it's been a whirlwind of 95-degree heat while moving. So I feel exhausted. I tried to go to the gym today, almost died, it felt like. So yeah, no, I'm excited to finally be done with all of that. I have a week of vacation ahead of me, and I can actually focus in on these games a little bit more. Last night I watched all of it. Game 1, I had to miss a little bit of time. So yeah, it kind of has been, it's funny because I feel like listening to the commentators and like listening to like more of your like low level understanding of the game type of, things. Everyone's just talking about Tampa Bay's just dominating this series, but I don't think that's entirely the case. I feel like it's actually been pretty evenly matched. So I'm excited to see what Montreal can do back at home. Matt, how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, well, I will just say moving in this heat does not sound, doesn't sound too fun. I'm glad you finally get to sit back and relax, and, we're going to try and, get to the bottom of this series. But, Montreal has shown us throughout the year that they're, they don't go out easy. With the Toronto series being the prime example of that. Also Vegas, I wrote them off as dead. So, that's sort of where we're at this point. Before we do get into things, let's talk about Prize Picks right now. Make sure you head on over to prizepicks.com and use promo code MMN if you haven't already signed up. It's super simple. What you do over there is you look at the board across multiple sports. There's up to a dozen sports at any given time, and you select the player and you say whether they're going to go under or over their posted fantasy score. That's it. You can do it with up to 5 players on an entry and win up to 10x the money you put in. So it's a super fun, super simple fantasy game. We don't have anything up right now for the NHL, but maybe circle back tomorrow. And if we do get it in time, maybe we'll drop a comment on the video like I know Meany has from time to time. We can follow that lead and, get you set up with at least one selection for this Friday night action. But you can combine it across sports. So if you like hockey, you like baseball, even golf or something like that, you can do all 3 or more. So be sure to check it out. Go to prizepicks.com and use promo code MMN. All right. Getting back into the NHL sort of things. I did, before we got too far into the show, the nitty gritty, I actually did have a trade today. And it wasn't one of those like, AHL guy, so sometimes we see that sort of stuff happen during the quote unquote off season, but it's during the Stanley Cup Final. No, we saw Victor Arvidsson shipped out of Nashville, much to the chagrin of Philip Forsberg, for a second and a third. I mean, what do you think Nashville's up to? How do you feel about what happened today?
I mean, if I'm going to give my complete honest take based off of a little bit of, I would say, somewhat insider knowledge, and I'm not going to break that down, but I think that there's more to come from Nashville. I really don't think that this is a end of the road type of move for them. They have a very they've had the GM that's been there since their inaugural season, and David, is it Poile, correct? Is that how you say it?
Poile.
There, I knew I was going to say it wrong. Poile. He wants to hand it down to his son, and we all know that. And I think that he's kind of going to start shooting for the stars.
I didn't know that. He was.
Oh, really? Oh,
I thought that was his son to be the next GM.
Yeah, he's a part of the step. You didn't know that? Yeah, that's part of the whole thing. It's like, so you're talking about a guy that I don't think he's on the shortest leash in the world, but the leash is going to start shortening if he can't get that team back where it needs to be. It's not where it needs to be now. I really think there's going to be more to come. I think this is loading up on some assets for a guy that's definitely seen a bit of a decline. Matt, I know you mentioned it to a bunch of people in a group chat. He just turned 28 years old. It's not like this is a young budding star. This could be someone a bit on the decline as the numbers are kind of showing. So I think it was really fair for both teams. LA trying to revamp that market. They can't stay down for long. When they're winning, they're generating a ton of money and revenue. LA people will go where, the teams are good. So I really like it for both sides, because I don't think Arvidsson's dust. He's not done. He can definitely shoot. He can definitely find you ways to score goals, and putting him with a guy like Quentin Byfield might be something to kind of get him going, get him with a skilled forward. I kind of like it for LA as well. They don't really need to be stocking up on draft capital anymore. They already have a lot of it, and they already have a lot of top prospects coming through the pipeline. So Matt, what are your thoughts on it? I know we both have been fanboys of Victor Arvidsson. Yeah. I love him, and I've always been taking him on props. So it's not like I don't like the guy. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, my stance on Arvidsson sort of came down to the line he was playing on for those couple of years. The Jofa line was just incredible. Like, you go back and you look through, when they were on the ice together, they were, the perfection line level of dominant in the, pretty much sandwiched around their Stanley Cup final run. So I kind of am finding it hard now to say, like, oh yeah, the Kings are going to get that type of player who put up, I think, a 34 goal season. Yeah. In his peak. Like, he had a real down year, and that's obviously clouding things, but I don't really understand what the Kings are doing. He's definitely not a finisher in my book. He just doesn't really seem like the sort of dynamic piece that team needs. He seems like a perfectly fine top 9 forward. And, if I'm the Kings, I want to take a crack at guys who have slightly more upside, the guys who were frozen out of the lineup this season, like Kaliev and some other guys. I mean, they have Fadrimo. Like, they have so many guys who could be difference makers, I think, for them. And I'm not sure that shipping out futures for Arvidsson's exactly the move, especially with a fish like Jack Eichel out there, who, you would expect those picks could have been useful toward acquiring. So we'll see. I mean, I didn't want to spend too much time on this because it doesn't, we can't bet futures or anything just yet. But it was a really interesting, almost seismic level move. And it happened so fast today. I mean, it was, hinted at 11:15, and by noon he was done. The trade was gone, and everything was official. So super interesting there on the NHL streets. All right, let's get back to the Stanley Cup final though. We do have the Friday night game. Should be a lot of fun. So Tampa Bay heading into Montreal. Slight favorites, -140, Montreal +120 on the money line. We're seeing some interesting odds on the over-under. Like, throughout the last, honestly, couple weeks, seems like the overs have been more and more and more valuable to bet on. So much so that you can get the over 4.5 right now at -200. If you told me that at any point this season, that any game, especially one involving Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov, and Cole Caulfield, had a 4.5 over-under, even at -200 odds, of course, I would go for it. I know we have some different totals when we're looking at 5, it's different, and 5.5 obviously is different, and all those certainly are viable bets as well. But how do you feel about the pace in this game? And then secondly, how do you feel about Montreal's chances to cut the deficit in half in the series?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen such opposing from game 1 to game 2. The expected goals almost flip-flopped entirely, but both of them have been about 5. I feel pretty good about, and I know we talked about this before the podcast, like, if you find it at 4.5 or if you find it at 5, obviously the odds should be, I would rather just go over 5. Just take it. We never played for a push. I do think it could go over the 5 and get you to 6, but at the very least, you have that bit of a blanket, as this shouldn't be the highest paced game in the world, and the goaltending's been so good. So I do like the over a little bit, definitely at 4.5. I mean, that just seems like great parlay with some other sports, kind of a bet to place, just kind of throw that in the mix. But I do like Montreal to get back in this. It's tough. What were you gonna say?
Well, let's throw in a plug right there. Speaking of throwing it in the mix, the Mayo Media Network, the mix. Tons of sports going up there. There's the Euro action that'll be going on Friday. There's Wimbledon. That's going on. Obviously, golf and everything else that you've come to love, the Pat Mayo for. But there's a ton of different options. So make sure, if you're just finding this, and don't really know much about the Mayo Media Network, to check it out, because, the feed called The Mix you'll get a lot of action in if you want to find it with some really sharp people giving you advice. So anyway, right back into things. You just sort
Right
of
back into
mentioned that.
things. Yeah. So the expected goals for Montreal went 2.2 in game one, where they only scored one goal, to 3.6. A huge boost. Tampa went from 3.2 to 2.2. Like I said, kind of almost total flopping of the numbers. The 2.2 is from
Mm-hmm.
Montreal's game one to Tampa's two. So even though Tampa, was the better part of both games and scored 8 combined goals, which is kind of maybe a bit of a regression to the mean for Carey Price that I think many of us expected. I don't know what it's going to mean for game 3. I don't want to read into game 1 and 2 and say, well, definitely the next game is going to be this or anything of that nature. But it does lead me to think this game is a bit more of a toss-up than Vegas is quite giving it for a team at home. I think the line's going to come a little bit more towards the middle as the day goes on because of these metrics, etc. So I like taking the over, whether it's 4.5 or 5, a little bit more than the money line. If I was going to side with anything, if you can get Montreal at anything, I'd say plus 130 or above, I'd probably grab it. But if it's much closer to the middle, like I said, where I think it's going to move, I'm probably going to stay away from it in general, just to kind of enjoy the game. Hopefully it's high scoring rather than trying to get all cute with one of the teams taking this game here. And I think a lot of money is going to go to Montreal just to get back into it. So what are your, that might not be entirely true, but I don't know. I think that some people like to bet. People that don't bet as analytically will probably like the idea of Montreal getting back into it. That might be the way I wanted to put that.
I mean, that is one narrative, but I also kind of feel like Tampa's just the better team. And, obviously the travel and, being at home is a big deal for Montreal, but we don't know the status of Arturi Lehkonen. We don't know the status of Alex Killorn. Obviously one guy a piece for each side of this matchup. I'm not saying either one of those players sort of pushes me, in one direction, but if we see something that like Killorn's back and Lehkonen's out, that probably makes me comfortable enough to just say, let me just take the slight favorite in Tampa. I don't really think this line will move much. If it does, it honestly might get heavier on Tampa just because I think they're a public team. They won it all last year. Montreal is a great underdog story, but going into the series, they were definitely an underdog. And yes, there is some positive signs from these first 2 games, but Tampa won them both. I just kind of feel like whatever Montreal does, Tampa does it much better. Like, I'm not even going to say a little bit better. Like, I think Vasilevsky, in the last few years has been clearly superior to Carey Price. Their scoring talent. Like, yeah, Cole Caulfield's fun, but you have Steven Stamkos and Nikita Kucherov. Like, come on, you're not beating that. And then defensively, like, yeah, Victor Hedman's banged up, but so is Jeff Petrie. Shea Weber, he's been playing okay, but certainly nothing, substantial from Shea Weber. So it just sort of seems to me like in every facet, Tampa's just a little bit better. And that's leading me toward the money line because, Tampa can play any sort of game. If it's a 9-goal game, I feel just as good about Tampa as if it's a 3-goal game. So I kind of want to stay away from the over-under myself. And I do kind of feel myself compelled to back the Lightning in this one. But any other thoughts before we dig into a couple of player props, particularly maybe some around the news surrounding these 2 teams?
Well, I think you hinted at the bigger, I guess, story of the Killorn. He will be traveling to Montreal, so we don't know yet. It's definitely going to be a game time decision, but he'll definitely be playing banged up. We also had Lehkonen that went out in the 3rd period. We're going to have to see what happens there because that, the Gallagher-Lehkonen line was so incredibly good for them. And it honestly played well in that game when they were out there. So that does definitely change a little bit. If you look at the matchups in games 1, at least in games 2, definitely game 2, you see a bit more. It looked like Tampa was trying to get the point line out against Suzuki's line. In which case it definitely diminished Cole Caulfield's upside because he wasn't quite getting the minutes because clearly they did not want him out there trying to defend those guys. Suzuki stayed out there for a lot of time. He's been playing so well. He had 9 shots on goal after putting an absolute 0 burger up the game before on DraftKings. So, it's interesting. The line matches in Tampa, but I don't think that's going to stick. I think Deneau is going to be basically fixated on Braden Point. Yep. And that, I think, is going to open up things for the Cirelli-Stamkos stack in my eyes. Cirelli did take that top power play over, which I was guaranteeing pretty much it was going to be Palat as put Palat on there in game 1 after Killorn went down. They score a goal with Palat out there, and they're like, nah, Cirelli. So if Killorn is out, Cirelli should be on that top unit. I couldn't imagine it switching. Sergachev had a little bit of run there, but I think that was more to do with someone being on the ice when that happened.
Yeah, that one I remember seeing that, and that was just Hedman changed, and the other three guys were like, nah, I want to keep playing. Right. And it was like a minute into the power play, and they got set up and did their whole thing. But yeah, no reason to really suspect any changes from the Tampa side of things unless Killorn draws in. That does make Cirelli kind of interesting. He did score last game, though I will say the guy doesn't shoot. So that kind of concerns me. Like, you're really banking on, honestly, kind of a broken play, I think, for Cirelli to score, or something fluky, like in game 2, where he just sort of shot it from the blue line and, it just seeing eye shot went into the net. He's certainly not a rates guy or anything like that. Andre Palat, on the other hand, has been a really strong rates guy. And just, isn't getting the top power play nod, obviously, but it's worth considering Andre Palat, especially, if he's going to be super low owned like he was on the last slate, but no power play one time there for him. So
you want to do one more, one thing I don't want to forget before we get into the player props. Tampa Bay in the playoffs has lost how many games by more than one goal? There we go. Here's the question for you.
I think Florida did it once.
Yes.
I think Carolina did it once too, but I think that's it. The Islanders didn't have any.
I don't think Carolina didn't do it at all.
No? Oh, wow. Okay.
Carolina only took one game, and it was a 3-2 overtime game. They won 4-1, and the Islanders, even though they did force 7, they won by 1, they won by 1, and they won by 1. So this has been one game. I just wanted to point that out because I was thinking about it. I'm like,
dude, I miss Florida. That was
everyone missed this Florida.
Fun. That was a fun team. Come on.
We all miss Florida.
They're so
I would have loved that to just continue on. Just keep playing 4-game series. Yeah. I'm not going to do all the Montreal, but they definitely have lost more games by more than one. I'm saying, like, imagine like taking Montreal, just getting crazy with it. I was kidding. I'm not going to do that. But yeah, it's just crazy. I think Tampa one loss by more than one goal in the playoffs. Just wanted to point that out. It seemed like an interesting stat.
Wow. So if Montreal does sort of get an explosion, it might come without Arturi Lehkonen. And frankly, we don't have a great sense of what they will do to sort of, fill that void. My sense is that Jake Evans would draw in to fill the fourth line role, and then Joel Armia slides up to sort of that shutdown line type role. Armia's, perfectly fine and maybe even better than Lehkonen, honestly.
Evans definitely back.
Evans was back for game 1, and then he sat out game 2 because Armia. No, it wasn't due to injury. It was that whole COVID thing. However, I mean, it's weird. Tatar has been there, and he's just been sitting out, and he actually was playing with Dano for a while this season. So, not really knowing what they're doing hurts from a talking about the game perspective, but hopefully something like that we would get clarity on, in morning skate, if not pregame warmup, or pregame warmups, if not morning skate. The power play would obviously be more complicated, but Lehkonen isn't on a power play. So that's that. So I think if Tatar plays, he's an interesting name, especially in Showdown. Like Evans isn't very exciting. Obviously, Tatar hasn't been great, but I think he does sort of have that upside that you're looking for from such a cheap player. But really, is there anyone on the Montreal side that maybe based on matchups or something like that who you are looking to back in this one?
Like one individual player, like are you essentially alluding to like if I run a like 5-1, or do you mean like
or if you're looking at player props? I don't know. We have a full complement of options ahead of us here.
I mean, imagine saying this after game 1, but like I honestly think it could be Suzuki because I don't think he's going to draw the most difficult matchup in the world comparatively. I don't know. Will it be anybody? He could draw the Gord line more than.
Yeah, that's the problem.
It's that's so difficult. Okay.
Tampa's really, really good. I think that's the conclusion we're reaching here. And, for me, I think I'm focused on the back end here for Montreal, be it Shea Weber, Jeff Petrie, maybe even Eric Gustafsson. Like he doesn't have a shot prop posted. But, if Montreal is going to get in this one, you would think they need to generate some offense. And Gustafson's on that top power play, all that stuff. But anyway, the main two guys are obviously Petrie and Weber. They've both been pretty serviceable so far in this series. Weber has 14 shot attempts through 2 games, 7 of them on net. Jeff Petrie has 6 shots on goal on 10 shot attempts, in 2 games. So I think both of those guys have very attractive shot props. Looking at DraftKings, we can get Jeff Petrie over 1.5 at -195. Kind of sucks, like the -195, just bump up to 2.5 and let us play. And then Shea Weber over 2.5 plus 115. So I think the Shea Weber one's where I'm leaning myself. And also in Showdown, just because in Showdown, if you play a 5-1 stack, you're probably needing guys who get shots and get blocks without scoring on Vasilevsky, because 5-1 stacks will probably have Vasilevsky on them. And I just sort of think that makes the most sense. And they're not priced like, minutes eating defensemen should be, in my opinion. Like Shea Weber's a full 1,400 less than Victor Hedman, who just seems kind of broken. So, I'm pretty much set with those guys. But I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to discuss here before we wrap things up.
No, it is really cool that DraftKings is kind of giving you the full gamut of all the players. Yeah. It does make things a little bit more interesting. I mean, I'm kind of 2.5 plus 105 for Gallagher. I mean, I know he was kind of a dud last time out, but at home, I mean, I don't know, man. Him not getting over 2.5, it seems pretty rare for that to be a plus money type of bet. I mean, he definitely is a shooter. If they need to get goals, he'll be out there. That seems a little bit weird to me. So I could see that, just more the longevity of it. And Nick Suzuki, 1.5 minus 225. It's like, come on. I mean, I know he had a 0 in there recently, but that seems a bit wild to me. Yeah, any of these, there's a lot of seemingly pretty easy, not completely easy takes, but easier. The Petrie one also, like you said, that is just almost, I'm not gonna say free money, but that guy, he's been firing the puck. I mean, as long as the minutes are there, which they should be, that seems very fair.
As long as his pinky doesn't fall off, he's good.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. I mean, the Tampa side, you could take your headbins, your points. I would be okay with. There hasn't been one guy individually that's blown the doors off shot wise. So is there one player that you wanted to mention here? I mean, it kind of seems like they spread the wealth pretty well.
Yeah. I think for me, it's honestly probably a guy like Andre Palat, because Kucherov is good, but he's been very selective in his shot attempts. And he's getting a ton of good looks, but he's only really taking shots when he's getting these great looks or on the power play. And I'm just frankly not willing to bet on power play production in a series and in a playoffs like this, where, like we've seen clear fouls be just, let go. And also, the game's back in Montreal, they're down to, like, I just feel like there's every reason in the world to let this be sort of a knockdown, drag out type brawl. And Kucherov at 5-on-5 has just not been dynamic. I know he had a great game. He's been great, but he's not been the elite level Kucherov that I think we're paying for. So that's sort of like I'm a little leery on it, which makes me think maybe Andre Palat picks up some of the shooting slack, or you just go to a different line entirely, because like we said, Philip Deneau has been great this postseason. And maybe that opens up the door for a guy like Steven Stamkos to take advantage of easier matchups. Also being featured on the power play, over 2.5 plus 100. I think that's my favorite shot prop.
All right, very fair. With all that being said, is there any last minute things or any favorite bets you wanted to say?
There's also a total shots on goal prop, over 58.5, minus 118, under 58.5 is minus 112. I find that one kind of interesting. If you're saying, there's basically 30 shots on goal per team, I don't see that happening myself. So I kind of like the under there, and you kind of get like blanket coverage to the game, and you're not relying on one specific player, but yet you're still sort of taking a risk on the pace of the game in general. And this one just feels, a lot of neutral zone type play, a lot of carefulness from Montreal, and just pray they don't get scored on early, because if they do, I think the floodgates will open up. But if not, I see that under sort of coming in real nice for you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say a couple. I'm going to say my longest odds favorite would be to take someone on that Barclay Goodrow, Gord, Coleman line. And, Gord plus 300, Holman plus 370, and Barkley Goodrow plus 460. I mean, I'm not saying that Gord would probably be the favorite there. Seemingly the easiest one to take. He's seeing 20 minutes. They're all seeing like 18, 17, 20 minutes. Gord seems like plus 300 seems a little bit odd. I think they're going to have a real favorable matchup against some of the depth on Montreal. I wouldn't mind putting a little bit of money. I'm one of them. I think, as far as shot volume is concerned, none of them jump off the page to me as like the clear cut, like unreal shot volume, but none of them also I think are absolute duds. Barkley Goodrow, I think, is a decent to good piece to throw in the mix in your showdowns. 2-4 for him. It's kind of like
it's real cheap.
You're getting potentially 20 minutes of ice time if they're up big early. I don't know. I mean, Yanni Gord to score plus 300, I think makes the most sense. And then putting Barkley Goodrow with maybe him, or I probably wouldn't throw the whole line together, but him and Barkley, and just hoping again Goodrow assist. I mean, what a great setup he had on that buzzer beater. Something like that I think could come together nicely. Just to kind of put a full circle thought on that line. Anything that you really like? Longer odds or?
Yeah. Not really, honestly. Like I'm looking at like these multi-point and things like that, and just nothing really stands out to me. So I think this one will be much more low key for me.
You think Eric Chernak first goal? Come on. Plus 5,000?
Oh boy. No.
Come on.
No.
Okay, sorry. I'm having fun. All right.
Anyway, hopefully you guys all on the video version enjoyed DJ's
I'm on the casting
visit.
Couch.
Yep. We're doing anything we can to keep Jack Eichel in town, So
anything is needed. Did you see his quote today about like from his agent? There was a quote from his agent saying like there's open lines of communication. It's like, and they were like, see, he might stay. And I'm like, oh, you guys don't.
I mean, we can't talk about the Sabres because I might start doing jumping jacks for Don Granato. And we know how this ends. It ends horribly for us. But
it is literally like the definition of like leaving the door a crack for someone. Yeah. Like the relationship's over. I'm like, maybe. And it's like everyone's like, Eichel's going to stay. And I'm like, oh, he's so gone.
Yeah.
He's so gone.
Anyway. When Victor Arvidsson scores 50 goals with Jack Eichel as his center, don't say you didn't hear it here first. So, DJ, anything you want to say to wrap up this season of Fantasy Hockey Picks and Bets?
Yeah, I mean, first off, thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to everyone for getting involved, comments, everything. We loved every minute of it. I had so much fun this year. I think we both have a lot of exciting things that we're trying to push forward and grow this brand and our brands even more. So if you liked what you got so far, there's more to come. Next season, I think, is going to be back to normal, hopefully without any hiccups, and we can cover a whole bunch of stuff. And, hopefully into the future, we're going to get Olympics. We're going to get all that all together. We'll all be in on it. We have a really good group and they're amazing. So thanks to everyone. Thanks to Pat times a million for giving us a chance.
Yeah, second everything you said. Be sure to follow us both on Twitter. I'm at Fake Moods and DJ's at DJ_Mitchell94. And you can keep tabs on us. But like we said, we should be back, off season or preseason or regular season. Who knows? We'll plan on being back, though.
I'm not sure if we'll be on here specifically, but we'll definitely be doing stuff.
Anyway, just keep tabs on us. And again, appreciate all the support throughout this season. And lastly, big thanks to Prize Picks for stepping up to the plate, knocking out of the park as, my first ever ad read. Never done an ad read before. So that was a lot of fun. So big thanks to Prize Picks for that. Anyway, let's get on out of here. Best of luck on Friday, everybody. Have a good slate, and we will see you.